You don't survive in banking for decades by being the smartest person in the room every single day. That's not how it works. You survive by respecting risk more than you respect your own opinions, because the truth is markets don't care what you think. They don't care what you intended. They care about exposure, liquidity, discipline, and whether you were paying attention when things changed. I've seen cycles come and go. I've seen credit tighten when everyone thought it would stay easy forever. I've seen liquidity disappear in days that people assumed was permanent. And I've seen institutions fail not because they were completely reckless, but because they got comfortable. Comfort is what kills you in finance. The biggest misunderstanding about money, about banking, about building something that lasts is that people think success is about aggression. It's not. It's about controlled aggression. There's a difference. You can be bold, but if you're not disciplined, you're just gambling with better branding. Risk is always there. It never disappears. It only moves. It shifts from one part of the system to another. And when people say this time is different, that's usually when I start paying the most attention, because those are the exact words that precede mistakes. The economy is not a machine you can perfectly predict. It's a living system made of human behavior, incentives, fear, greed, and policy reactions. So you don't try to outguess every move, you prepare. That's the mindset most people miss. Preparation means you assume things will break, not because you're pessimistic, but because that's reality. Credit cycles end, liquidity tightens, inflation reappears when people stop expecting it, growth slows when optimism gets too loud. And when those shifts happen, the institutions that survive are the ones that were conservative when it felt unnecessary to be conservative. I've always believed that your balance sheet tells the truth about you, not your speeches, not your forecasts, your balance sheet, because it shows whether you respected downside risk when everything looked good. And that's the hardest time to be disciplined, when everyone around you thinks you're being overly cautious. People don't reward caution in real time. They reward it after the fact. That's the irony. The discipline that saves you in a crisis is the same discipline people question during stability. But if you've been through enough cycles, you stop caring about short-term approval. You care about survival and compounding. And compounding only works if you're still in the game. There's another misconception that success in banking or in business in general is about taking big swings. The reality is more boring, and that's why people underestimate it. It's about consistency. It's about underwriting risk properly. It's about saying no more often than you say yes. It's about understanding that every loan, every exposure, every decision has a probability distribution attached to it. You're not dealing with certainties, you're dealing with outcomes. And the people who last are the ones who respect that uncertainty every single day, not just when it's convenient. Leadership is another thing people misunderstand. They think leadership is about charisma or vision statements, but real leadership, especially in financial systems, is about accountability when things go wrong. Because things will go wrong. The question is not whether mistakes happen. The question is whether the organization learns, adapts, and strengthens from them or hides from them. If you build a culture where people are afraid to speak up, you will eventually be surprised by something you should have seen coming. That's a guarantee. So you build transparency, you build directness. You build a system where bad news travels fast because good news already travels too fast in most organizations. Markets also teach humility in a very specific way. You can be right for a long time and still lose money if your timing is wrong or your leverage is excessive. That's a lesson people learn the hard way. So you don't just ask, am I right? You ask, how long can I be wrong and still survive? That's risk management in one sentence. And if you can't answer that question clearly, you're not managing risk. You're just expressing opinions with leverage attached. There's a difference between conviction and vulnerability disguised as conviction. Inflation is another example of how people misunderstand systems. They think inflation is just a number on a chart, but it's actually a reflection of imbalances in demand, supply, policy, and expectations. And once expectations shift, inflation becomes harder to control because it embeds itself into behavior. Wages adjust, pricing power adjusts, contracts adjust, and suddenly what looked temporary becomes structural. That's why central banks have such a difficult job, because they are not just reacting to data, they are reacting to psychology. In banking, trust is everything. Trust is what allows deposits to exist. Trust is what allows credit to flow. Trust is what keeps the system stable even when underlying conditions are imperfect. But trust is fragile. It takes years to build and moments to lose. That's why institutions have to operate with a margin of safety that feels excessive during good times. Because good times are when complacency grows fastest, and when trust breaks, it doesn't break slowly, it breaks abruptly. People also underestimate how global the system is. Capital moves instantly now, information moves instantly. Stress in one part of the world can transmit into another part in ways that weren't possible decades ago. So you can't think locally anymore. Even if your business feels domestic, the forces affecting it rarely are. That's why macro awareness matters, even if you're not a macro trader. Because macro conditions set the environment in which micro decisions either succeed or fail. You can be a great operator in a bad environment and still struggle. And you can be average in a strong environment and look like a genius until the environment changes. One of the hardest things for people to accept is that cycles don't end because everyone agrees they should end. They end because something breaks the balance. Usually it's leverage or liquidity or confidence. And when that shift happens, speed matters more than prediction, because reacting slowly in a fast-moving system is the same as not reacting at all. Technology is changing everything too, especially artificial intelligence, but the core principles don't change. Risk doesn't disappear because models improve. Uncertainty doesn't disappear because data increases. Human behavior doesn't become perfectly rational because tools become more powerful. If anything, technology amplifies both good decisions and bad ones faster than before. So the discipline requirement increases, not decreases. If I had to reduce all of this into something simple, it would be this: stay humble in good times, stay rational in bad times, respect cycles, respect leverage, respect liquidity, and never confuse comfort with safety, because they are not the same thing. The real billionaire mindset, if you want to call it that, is not about luxury or status or even ambition in the way people imagine it. It's about endurance. It's about staying stable when systems are unstable. It's about making decisions that still make sense 10 years from now, not just 10 days from now. And it's about understanding that survival is not passive, it's active. It requires constant attention, constant discipline, constant adjustment. Most people want certainty, but markets don't offer certainty. They offer probabilities. And the people who succeed are the ones who respect those probabilities enough to never bet everything on a single outcome. Because no matter how confident you are, the world will always reserve the right to surprise you.